All praise is due to the Lord and Sustainer of the universe, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and we beseech and implore Him to forgive our mistakes and our missteps and our transgressions, and to offer His most salient blessings and salutations upon His last and final Prophet, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and upon his kin, his companions, and all those who follow his guidance to the last day. He has left for us a clear, pristine path. Its day is as its night in its clarity, and all those who waver from it will find nothing but misery. Amma ba'd. As to what follows, so we are less than 4 days away from a very highly anticipated day here in the United States of America, the presidential elections to elect the next president, as well as many offices in Congress, both in the Senate and the House, and as well as local office. And as many of us have witnessed, this has been a highly contentious and acrimonious campaign season. We've seen many accusations. We've seen many demonizations of one candidate or the other by both their supporters and the candidates themselves. And we, as part of the Muslim community here in this country, who has been an important part of the community overall in this country for the better part of 3 or 4 centuries, before even the founding of the United States of America, one might ask, what is our role? What is our obligation in all of this? And many of us probably have heard much about this before, ranging from the idea that it's a religious obligation to vote, and perhaps even an obligation to vote for a particular candidate, to the other extreme, that it is completely immoral and unsanctioned and haram to participate at all in any of this political process. And what I want to offer today is not to try to change your mind or try to make you think what I want you to think, but rather offer you some principles that perhaps if we try to follow them, then we might be led to a more informed process and decision. The Quran reminds us that anyone who is entrusted with the care, the upkeep, the maintenance of another should have certain attributes. And there are 2 main attributes that one should look for. When the Prophet Musa alayhi salam went to the Qawm of Midian, where he encountered his future father-in-law and Prophet Shu'aib, and he found the 2 daughters trying to get to the well and trying to get their daily water from it, and able to do so, and he was able to do that on their behalf. One of the daughters then goes to Shu'aib alayhi salam, and says to her father, "Ista'jir فإن خير من استأجرت القوي الأمين." Why don't you hire him? Why don't you bring him to help us? Because the best that you can hire that can be of service to us, al-qawi al-amin, the strong and the trustworthy. In another prophet of the tribes of Israel, the prophet Joseph alayhi salam, when he was presented before the Aziz's court in Egypt, and he tells the Aziz, after he asks him, what of the political ministries would you like to have? I want to put them at your disposal. And then the Prophet Yusuf alayhi salam says to him, "Ij'alni ala khaza'in al-ard, inni hafidhun alim." Let me have the treasury, the khaza'in, because you will find for me that I have hifz and ilm, that I have trustworthiness and I have knowledge. Taking these 2 together, we see the 2 main principles. One that has to do with character, what you can call the internal disposition of a person, and one has to do with ability. One has to do with competency, which is the external ability. And so the best that is to be entrusted with the care of another, whether it's the highest office in the land, the president, or a nanny for your children, should have these 2 attributes. They should have competency, they should be competent, they should be knowledgeable, they should be skillful in the particular thing that they are going to be in charge of. And number 2, they should be trustworthy. They should be honest. They should be beyond reproach in their moral fiber, in their moral character. If they have these 2 things, then we call that person a thiqah. Ahl al-Hadith. The scholars of Hadith, when they were evaluating what are the criteria by which we understand the soundness of a report that is attributed to the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. One of the most important tasks that the ulama of our ummah have ever taken on. The very preservation of the deen depended upon it. And they made these two same criteria. Al-adala, trustworthiness, right? And precision. How well they know the hadith. Al-hifz, how well they memorize. How well they can relate. How well they can report something. So the same two attributes. Skill, competence, and trustworthiness. And good character, moral fiber. These are the things anyone should look for, and these two attributes in anything. It's not enough to have one. If you want to hire someone to cut your lawn, they could be the most trustworthy person in the world. But if they never handle the lawnmower, they're not the person to cut your lawn. And likewise, you want someone to keep watch over your house while you're gone. They may have house sat for many houses, but if they're not an honest and trustworthy person, you're not going to entrust them to your house and the values that reside within it. So we look for both attributes. Imam Zarruq says, when you are looking for something, like in a teacher, and you don't find all of the things that you need to find, then find as many of them as you can find. So if we don't find the appropriate amount of competence and trustworthiness in any particular person we are looking for, whether it's in business, whether it's in marriage, or whether you're electing a senator, a congressman, or a president, then you find the most that you can find, depending upon the choices that are put before you. These are the principles by which Muslim civilization was built. These are the principles, while Muslim civilization has not always held these principles, has not always lived up to them. In the past 100 or so years, you can easily see that in much of the Muslim world, these principles have not been held up. But when they have been held up, when they have been touted as the most important principles in arranging the idarat al-ard, the management of our affairs that go beyond just the individual, then you see the flourishing of Muslim civilizations. When they are not held up, then you see a debasement, and they become the worst societies and communities to reside in, rather than the best ones. So when we make our choices about anything, when we're dealing with another, let these two guiding attributes, these two guiding principles be at hand. Furthermore, many will try to sway you. Many will try to bring you to their side. Many will use sloganeering. Many will use kind of poetic type of words to try to sway you, to bring you. But this is not the criteria by which we choose. The Muslim is enjoined to use his intellect, or her intellect, to think about things, to see things for what they really are. And rather than just going by slogans, by words, we look to deeds, we look to action. We don't judge the internal aspect of a person. If someone tries to sway you to their side by saying, well, this person on the inside, they have this motivation, or they have this intention, or they have this is immediate red flag to tell you that they're very partisan, that they're trying to bring you to their particular faction, their particular party, maybe even their particular sect. When they impinge upon the internal intention of one another, because no one can know that except Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. All that we can go by is what we call a zahir, what we see on the outside. We see from their deeds, from their acts. If they want to criticize that aspect, if they want to bring your attention to something of that aspect, then by all means do so, because that's how we go by evaluating people. But no one knows what's inside of one. No one knows the true intentions and motivations. Sometimes people themselves don't even know their true intentions and motivations. So how can another make such a claim? So if you see this, it's an immediate, as I say, red flag. Be careful. Someone's trying to sway you to their side. Furthermore, when we make these type of decisions, we should always keep in mind that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is ultimately in charge of our affair. And that come Wednesday, November 10th, the world will still be here. The United States of America will still be here. You and I most probably will still be here. And there will still be much work to do. Nothing is as apocalyptic, nothing is as doomsday as people make it out to be. Why? Because the affair of the world is not entrusted to any single human being, or not even to humanity as a whole. It never has been. The affair of the universe, you and my affair as well, and our children's affair, and our grandchildren, and our neighbors, is not entrusted to any individual, or to any group, or to any country, or any political system. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, God Himself, has taken upon this trust. He is the one who ensures our survival. He is the one who ensures our rizq, our livelihood, and our continuing life and livelihood. No one else can make such a claim. And if someone else tries to make such a claim, then this is a sign of their jabarut, of their tyranny. And all those who made such claims in the past, they were destroyed by God. Pharaoh made such a claim when he decreed to his people, "Ana rabbukum al-a'la," I am your Lord Most High. And he was smited by God, drowned in the Red Sea, and then left his body on the side, on the river edge, as a sign for God, as a sign for those to come after to see, as an ayah for those to reflect. So no one can make such a claim. Do not take upon yourself and do not attribute to others that which has been left to Allah. That which has been left to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so, whatever the result, whatever the outcome, there will be much that needs to be done by all communities all over the world. We live in a very polarized, factionalized world today. We have Muslims killing one another in at least 5 countries around the world. At least 5, including Yemen, Iraq, Syria, Central African Republic, many places, Muslims killing one another. And we have other people killing one another as well. And oftentimes, people don't know why they're fighting, except that they belong to this group, and this other person belongs to that group. And since he's not from my group, that instantly makes him an enemy. And so in the next khutbah, after the break, I'm going to talk a little bit about how careful we must be when such type of rhetoric is presented before us. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر لكم ولسائر المسلمين فاستغفروه فإن التائب من ذنب كمن لا ذنب له. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيد المرسلين وآله وصحبه أجمعين وبعد. So as I mentioned, factionalism, partisanism, sectarianism, these are all things plaguing us. Not just here in this country, but all over the world. It's a worldwide virus, for lack of a better word. And so do not become infected by the virus of factionalism and sectarianism. Do not judge another merely by their affiliations or who you think or what group that they belong to. No one should demonize another. No Democrat should demonize a Republican or Democrat, or a Sunni a Shiite, or a Shiite a Sunni, just because of their mere affiliation, because of what group you think they belong to, and what that group particularly stands for. We are in our dealings with one another, we are to take each one as an individual. We find that one of the main principles, the Islamic principles, is that we don't anathemize anybody. We don't declare anyone to be a kafir. We don't declare anyone to be outside of Islam on an individual basis, illa bin nas, except if there is a clear ayah from Quran or a clear hadith that's unequivocal in its meaning. And usually it's talking about someone who lived in the past, not someone who's yet to exist. So Abu Lahab, tabbat yada Abi Lahab wa tab. If you don't believe Abu Lahab is in the fire, you're not a Muslim, because it means you don't believe in the meanings of the Quran. But short of this, we cannot demonize people. We can't say because they belong to this group. We can't say to our friend who is Muslim and converted, and then his non-Muslim parents had died some years before, and then he asks us the inevitable question, well, what about my parents? What happened to them? Oh, they're in the hellfire. A'udhu billah. How would you know they're in the hellfire? Were they mukallaf? Did they truly receive the message of Islam? Were they sane for the part of their life where they would have been mukallaf or accountable? And beyond this, we don't know how Allah is going to treat these people. We don't know if they had the kufr. Did they reject? This is something that's left to Allah. So as I said earlier in the khutbah, do not take upon yourself those things that are left to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so the nasir, where people will be in the next life, what will happen to them, no individual has a right to speak anything about this. The most that we can do is pray for them. We hope for them. We are hopeful. But to insist, and we have Muslim factions and sects around the world today who do this, unfortunately, who insist that unless you believe a particular faction is in the hellfire, then you too will be in the hellfire. Or unless you believe that a particular faction is no longer Muslim, no longer in the millah, then you too are the same. Where is this craziness coming from? It's not coming from the deen. It's not coming from sound Islamic principles. It's coming from the common thread between all tyranny and all despotism in the world, namely the human and the failings of the human ego. That's where it comes from. The human ego thrives upon ignorance. And when it's ignorant of something, it fears it. And when it fears something, then it otherizes it. When it otherizes it, it dehumanizes it. It's no longer a human being in that regard. It's something completely different. And we, as Muslims, I believe, the true way that we can make our mark in these communities, not so that we can make a mark, not so that we can show up our public image, not so that people can say things about us, but to uphold the legacy of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, is that we must hold ourselves to the highest moral and ethical standards. We must be the standard bearers of the best of humanity. People should look to us and say, what about all this negativity, all of this rancor, all of these things going on? Well, what do the Muslims say about that? Because they're usually very even-keeled. They're usually very anchored. They usually have a very straight way of looking at things. Maybe we could ask them. Maybe they can shed some light upon this situation. That's how we should be. We shouldn't be just another self-interest group. Don't vote in this election if all that you're thinking about is to improve the state of Muslims and see which candidate will be better for the Muslims. See which candidate is better for America. See which candidate, not just for America, this is the most powerful position in the whole world. The most powerful political office in the whole world is President of the United States. So it's not just about America, it's about the rest of the world. See who's best for all, not just for our own small self-interest. We don't want to be another self-interest group. There's plenty of those groups around. And all that they will ever do by lobbying and begging on the stairs of Congress and of their local capitals is a few crumbs that will be thrown their way based upon their political lobbying and any political donations that they make. True change comes about by sacrifice. African Americans in this country got nothing by pandering to political lobbies, got nothing by pandering to politicians. The only way they got something, the civil rights movement, was based upon sacrifice. And if you think that we as Muslims are going to combat Islamophobia and combat xenophobia and combat all the phobias people are talking about today by sitting on the stairs and lobbying and holding protests at the stairs of our political leaders only without sacrifice, then you don't know what you're talking about. Because if we look at the history, no one got anything in this country except by sacrifice. So if you want to be active and you want to uphold the legacy of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, you have to be ready to sacrifice. And you have to be ready to be aqil. You have to be ready to put your intellect before your emotions. And you have to be one who is tolerant. You have to have what we call al-wusa'. You have to be of wide breadth so that you can encompass all. You don't demonize anybody. You don't dehumanize anyone. All of our khair, our good, should spread to every single person that we come into contact with. No one should come into contact with us and come out a worse person than they started. Because if that's happened, then we didn't do our job right. Then we didn't live up to the ideal of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. No one came into the contact of the Prophet ﷺ except they came out a better person for it. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to forgive us our sins, our mistakes, our transgressions, to lift the trials and tribulations upon all our brethren wherever they may reside, and to enlighten our souls, to enlighten our minds, to enlighten our hearts, so that we can make the best decisions in all of our life. And we go by the two main principles, as mentioned by some of the hukama, al-istishara, istikhara, istishara, good consultation, good sound counsel. We counsel with one another, ad-din al-nasiha. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to live up to this ideal. And then the other aspect is al-istikhara, that we put Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in all our affairs. We seek the good, we go directly towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us tawfiq, to give us success in doing this, and to bless us that we say upon our last breath in this life, La ilaha illallah Muhammadan Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, inna Allah ma'akum ameen, بدأ بنفسي وثنى بملائكة القدس حيث يقول إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد كما صليت على سيدنا إبراهيم وعلى آل سيدنا إبراهيم وبارك على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد كما باركت على سيدنا إبراهيم وعلى آل سيدنا إبراهيم في العالمين إنك حميد مجيد عدد خلقه ورضا نفسه وزنة عرشه ومداد كلماته. وقم الصلاة.